The following may contain language that is not suitable for all audiences. It's time for the Low Fact Podcast. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again.
After a brief hiatus.
Did we have a brief hiatus? I guess
1 week.
We did.
Yep.
So, the news stuff isn't really turning me on anymore. It's basically more the same. But there were a couple of items that I thought was funny in the fact that they were mentioned and who mentioned them.
Okay.
For example, apparently sometime last week, some George Floyd memorial was struck by lightning in Ohio.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that as a meme. It's already a meme on Instagram.
But there are a lot of right leaning, a lot of stuff that's aimed at the folks that on the right side, on the right leaning edge of stuff. That got reported.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, it's like God.
Maybe.
I think it's just a lightning strike, but
Lightning strikes are pretty rare, but I just thought it was funny how there were a lot of... Actually, it wasn't even a lot. It's only a couple that I've seen.
a lot of what?
Blogs or people kind of reporting that as if it's supposed to mean something. And it may. I don't know. Another thing that I found kind of interesting was the fact that the current administration is actively trying to discourage refugees.
They are?
From Cuba.
Why don't they want the Cuban refugees?
Well, one news person whose target audience are, right-leaning folks is that, well, the whole encouragement of all these illegal immigrants, aliens, whatever, is trying to change the demographics so that, the Democrats can always stay in power.
Uh-huh.
And people from Cuba are notoriously not left-wing.
Oh, yeah, because so they'd just kind of be bolstering the conservative numbers in a state like Florida.
Well,
that would be bad.
I don't know how much more you can bolster Florida.
I don't know. Well, Florida's right now, but it was like, it used to be that it was always a shit show in Florida in the election.
What do you mean? Are you talking about because of the 2000 elections?
Yeah. This time around, there was no issues in Florida.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
But, so, because there are stories about how the administration are sneaking people in to various parts of the country.
Yeah, I've seen that stuff.
But when it comes to people that would most likely come from Cuba, it is, if you come by boat, you're not going to set foot on American soil.
Wow. Well, I saw something like along a similar. I also saw an article about Cuba, and it was to do with BLM basically coming out in favor of the regime.
Well, there's a lot of leftists.
Cuba.
There's a lot of lefties coming out in favor of the regime, which is, I don't know.
And I'm just kind of like, well, no, it was more like the news story was like they're anti-America, but they're pro-Cuba. And I'm like, okay, well,
on the election front, this stuff hasn't gone away. It's just keep on coming. There's more. I don't know if it's issues, but there's more evidence. I don't know what to call it, but there's more people reporting on how there was at least 10,000 people voting illegally in Georgia. And by voting illegally, what is meant is they moved and they didn't change their address in time, and they just went back and voted in their previous polling place.
Oh.
So like they move out of the county that they're in and then go back to their old county and just voted.
Oh.
Which, for statewide elections, like for federal elections or state or for the US Senate, that probably wouldn't make a big deal. But for local stuff, like for state senate,
Mm-hmm.
state reps, probably be a big deal.
So, but if you're like if you've moved to a separate place, why would you go back to your old polling place?
Oh.
That's just weird.
And Tucker Carlson also came up with something where they said that potentially somewhere around like 4,000 votes were actually, quote unquote, illegal, as in duplicate votes and, whatnot.
Georgia was close, right?
Georgia's very close.
Like a couple of thousand votes.
All of them were very close.
That's the thing about elections in America. It's always close.
And there was a response on another blogging type person who was saying that after that Tucker Carlson bombshell came out, the corporate media just came out with more like, Russia collusion type stuff. But I did notice that on NPR in the week, they were talking about lying lawyers trying to because Giuliani had his law license suspended in New York, and there were these people that are lying to the public about this stuff. And I'm just like, wow.
So the only people bringing actions are lying lawyers?
Well, no, the lawyers bringing other people's actions are liars. That type of thing is what the gist of the NPR thing. I was listening to it while I was kind of snoozing.
Man, this stuff is just, I don't know. I've lost all faith in the media.
Well,
I think most people have. I think it's a very high number. If you believe the polls about it's like 80%.
well, yeah, they've like. There's another thing. Tim Pool was saying that support for BLM is now net negative.
Really?
That basically they're pretty much where they were in 2016 in terms of support. So they've been going up, and now they've been going back down.
I wonder why.
And
Are people that contrary?
I don't know what it is, but in seeing all this stuff, it just made me kind of think, like, first of all, everybody kind of concedes that there's cheating going on in elections, but they don't want it to come out for years after the election. Like Kennedy, just all kinds. Kennedy's just the most recent one I can think of, but there's, they don't mind that.
They don't mind if it comes out later.
In 1990 something.
Right.
But within a few months, then it becomes an issue because everybody playing in this system really requires all the sheep and goats to believe that it's a fair system.
So I guess they're just kind of hoping that people are going to forget.
Well, people tend to. Life happens. Most people just don't really care about anything but keeping their family fed and housed.
Yeah.
And being able to live relatively okay.
Yeah.
But it did get me to thinking about this thing that we've talked about it before, and I've thought about it a lot. And that's like, the perceived benefits of lying as opposed to the perceived benefits of telling the truth.
There's more benefits to lying.
In the short run. Most definitely. And
unless you're a person that has a moral.
Well, it doesn't even, morals is the way to kind of couch it, but the person who lies can reap great benefits from the lying. It's everybody else that will be negatively affected.
Mm-hmm. And
so if you want to live in a society, you really want most of the people in the society to tell the truth, because then, the decisions can be made on, I don't know, accurate information, truthful information, just on the information.
Yeah, but everything has a spin on it. Like, I don't believe any of the information anymore.
Well, that's the potential drawback of lying. If you do it too much or too often to someone else's detriment, that person or group of people might all of a sudden just be like, I'm not gonna play. But there's still lots of societal pressure to keep playing. I mean, think about whenever someone talks about how they're going to vote third party, and then tons of people are sitting going, "You want to waste your vote? Why are you doing that?" I'm like, well, why do I have to choose between rancid meat and really rancid meat? and that goes back to the societal thing, right? I mean, what's the alternative to this system? And it's very scary. And the unfortunate thing with a lot of stuff is that the people that are messing stuff up, they'll be long gone when it comes time to pay the piper.
Well, unless shit breaks down really fast.
I don't think that stuff breaks down all that fast. It seems like it.
Like, it feels like the economy could... Like, right now, it feels like the economy is fucking tanking.
Well, the stock market has gone down. Inflation has gone up. Stock market's gone down. But this is all stuff that didn't happen 6 months ago or last year. It's been happening for the last, depending on who you ask, Woodrow Wilson. So that's like, what, 100 years? With the deficit spending?
Right.
Now, there's a lot of people that talk about all these deficit hawks talk about how it's bad. And from an individual's point of view, yeah, it seems bad. You can't keep on borrowing money because you're going to die one day, or you're not going to be able to pay back stuff.
I was just terrified by and again, this is where I get my information from Instagram memes. But I think I talked about this before. It was like a pile of lumber, 3 times more than it was a year ago.
Yeah, and the explanation is, well, it's because there's this increased demand. And I'm sitting there going, well, during the year when there was no demand, it's not like all that stuff kind of went away.
Yeah, I just think it's because of all the spending.
It's
the
money printing. The money printing is the big deal. And why that is scary is because from an individual's point of view, you can't keep borrowing money. After a certain point, someone will stop loaning you money.
Right.
For whatever reason.
But apparently the government can keep printing money.
Well, that's like a Keynesian economics type thing. Governments technically can go on forever, potentially. So as long as the system keeps on going, everyone can still, ride the merry-go-round and kind of hope that they die before the big bill comes up. Yeah, I don't know where I was going to go with the benefits of lying as opposed to the benefits of telling the truth. It seems to me that telling the truth helps more people. But if it doesn't help you and helps everybody else, do you really care?
The lie.
Yeah.
The truth. I already know the answers.
Or the truth. Let's say, you have 2 choices. One choice negatively affects you, but positively affects everybody else. And the other choice positively affects you, and, it probably negatively affects everybody else, but...
I don't think people care about that. Or even think about it. The effect of a lie on anyone other than themselves and those that are around them.
Yeah, and, eventually a lie will come back and bite you in the butt, but if it doesn't happen today, then, And there was a couple of things that I was thinking of, like this, the walk a mile in my shoes type statement.
Okay.
I mean, it's an analogy for sure, but my thought has always been, if you have to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, then you're really a dumbass. To know what that person's going through.
Right.
And you can live your life as an individual on that motto, and it will serve you pretty well. But if you're charged with a group, then
what, you mean taking care of a group?
Whatever. Right? So like let's think of war. Every individual could run away from a battle, or a bunch of them could. And, on an individual basis, you can definitely identify, relate to the desire to not be to meet a horrible end.
Right.
But if you're a general or a king, you can't have people running away. I mean, that's why desertion in wartime is like a capital offense. And you do it
knowing.
No, you as the administrator in charge sit there and do it. Like, okay, so, you're hungry. You got no other options, so you steal to eat. Everybody can relate, sympathize, empathize with that. But you can't have a viable society, country, whatever, where everybody steals. That would lead to the end of that country. I mean, Venezuela, where people are just where the leadership is just kind of hanging on by a thread, albeit because they're thieves. But I don't know where I'm going with this. It's not a coherent thought, and we don't practice. This is not like some kind of lecture.
I was just thinking there's tons of fucking stealing going on. People stealing food there.
There's tons of all that stuff going on, and the question is for an administrator, how much is acceptable? Because you're never going to have perfect enforcement of anything.
There's fucking zero enforcement.
For
like when it comes to people coming in and stealing food in a grocery store,
for many things,
shit.
And the real question is, why is that allowed and encouraged? That's the real question.
I don't know.
Well, there's all we can do is assume, and maybe some of those obsessions are right. Just like
because there's insurance
on the regular media side. All the stories revolve around government is legitimate. There was no cheating. Climate activists are all like, we need to change all this stuff because, for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, the EU is sitting there talking about how they're going to get rid of gas and diesel cars within the next 30 years. And I'm like, okay, well, how does that help?
It's always 30 years, though. Have you noticed that?
Well, it's always some time off in the future, yeah. But there's these, coronavirus is getting really bad, so you need to get vaccinated. And I hate to use that word because it's not a vaccination, it's an inoculation. And, throw out whether or not they work, whether or not they're bad. Somebody is benefiting quite greatly at having people line up to get shots because of fear. And I'm not saying that fear is misplaced, right? But what is the benefit? And if you want to tell me that it's just because the people that are so, I don't even know what to say if they're in charge of it, but that this one group wants to make sure that everybody else is safe.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what yeah.
Well, that's what they say, but we know that that's not. I suspect that's not even in the top 10 of reasons. A lot of people try to bring forth the Anthony Fauci thing with like, oh, you don't need to wear masks, and even he was like, oh, you don't need to wear masks. And when they said, well, why'd you say that? Well, I said it because I wanted to make sure there was enough stuff for everybody for the healthcare people.
That was his response.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm sitting there going, so basically, you lied. You're okay with that lie because you lied really for my benefit. And that hits me wrong in many ways. Number one, because it says that the group that I'm in is so insanely stupid that, you have to lie to me to get me to do stuff. You have to manipulate me to do stuff. And, what if I'm not a person that's out for power or riches? Which is essentially the same thing, right? Power and riches are the same.
Right.
What if I'm just some person that wants to live my life and, live it in relative comfort?
Yeah, that's everybody.
Right, but then somebody else has to decide what relative comfort means.
Well, they get to decide, or have to decide?
Both. Someone else.
I don't want someone else deciding.
Well, none of us do.
Because they're going to say, well, it's going to be okay for that. If that guy's barely getting by, that's good enough for me.
Again, that's the point.
Or not getting by.
Well, that's the point about the micro and the macro that we've kind of hit upon every now and then. Because for some reason, things are really different. Things are different for when you're talking about a handful or a small number of people as opposed to a large group. Right? It might be okay for one person to steal a soda. What if everybody does it?
Then there'll be no soda left.
Well, I don't know. Just one. Not like...
That's a lot of soda, man.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You know, it gets multiplied. The economies of scale gets multiplied. So, you know, this bait and switch always comes around. You know, when people are talking about how, oh, this needs to be done because it needs to be, you need to be more compassionate and there are people that are in a bad way and you need to kind of cut someone a break. You know, that's how the bail reform stuff comes out. And yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, cash bails is inequitable, I suppose. If you don't have any money.
Yeah.
Or you have very little money, you can't afford to post bail. You stay in, you know, and you might be wrongly accused.
Can't afford a fucking decent lawyer.
And anything, right? And so, yeah, on an individual basis, yeah, that's understandable. But what happens when you aggregate that to hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people?
Then nobody ends up going to jail.
Well, that's not the point. The point is what might be okay and just and reasonable when you're looking at it from the viewpoint of one person, all of a sudden becomes untenable when you're looking at, like, you know, when you multiply that by hundreds, thousands, millions, whatever. That's the weird effect.
The results.
You know, stuff that you can't do stuff on a micro level and apply it on a macro regime.
So you have to come up with a different solution for the macro regime?
Yes.
Huh. Oh, fuck.
And in the macro regime, okay, there's going to be people that fall through the cracks. You're all right with it as long as you're not one of the people that fall through the cracks.
Can we come back to the COVID thing for a second?
We can go wherever we want.
So you don't hold it against people that they're fucking scared out of their...
No!
Because I think we talked about this before, and I think basically I lied.
Okay. Because
I was like, yeah, I was like, I don't hold it against people who are really scared, but it's not the case. I mean, when I see someone who's freaking just terrified, who's like wearing the N95 mask and the fucking, you know, or two masks and the face shield, and they're just looking like a scared, you know, some kind of a scared woodland creature. I'm just like, I shake my head. Like, and mentally in my mind, I'm just like, you need to stop watching so much fucking TV or something. Like I do have like a negative view of people who are super, super terrified. Well, because I'm like, you need to stop something. Yeah, I do.
Well, it's a perfect example of the micro versus the macro. You know, as an individual, I've known fear. I've known bowel emptying fear.
Right.
And just to make it plain, that's a physiological response. You know, being so scared that you empty your bowels.
That's never in the movies.
That's not because you're scared. It is, but it's also because that's your body's way of trying to help you get through. Mm-hmm. Because if you're in a situation where seconds matter, calories matter, like 1 or 2 calories might matter, then your body hanging on to crap is not going to help you.
Really?
Yeah.
Because there's no calories in crap.
Well, there's no, you're not using all the calories you can. Like if you're in a, the big example is the fight for your life, right? The fight or flight response, the fight for your life, that type of deal. If you're in that situation, every calorie counts. Every ounce of strength counts. So your body is saying, I don't need to hold on to all this crap.
Literally.
Because you're using up calories to keep that stuff in your body.
Wow.
So you get rid of it. Very embarrassing. Quite itchy. Stanky. Which is probably why the Scots wore kilts, because when they go into battle, when it happens, it's just easy exit.
Oh my God, that's so disgusting.
It is. But going back on fear, I've known fear, and every one of us has.
But why would I look down so much on somebody who's fearful? Like, it's not just like looking down. I literally like have like almost an angry response to that person.
Because fear is also contagious.
Because I'm like
your anger.
I'm literally like, get away from me.
Listen, your anger is your personal response to trying to keep that fear from affecting you, I think.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then, because I've noticed it now like more than once. It's happened enough now that I'm like, what is going on with me? That the people that I'm kind of getting mad at is when those people are around me. I'm literally like, get away from me.
I think that's partly your fear, because this is, if you want to talk about coronavirus, it's relatively new. Well, SARS-CoV-2 is definitely new, but
I'm also like, it's most likely to be the fearful people who get sick.
I don't know.
Right. Well, because if you're in fear, if you're in a constant state of fear, your body is going to be,
physiologically things are starting to like you know.
So I'm like, I don't want to be in that state because I want to be healthy.
Well, sure, but I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm not saying you have to catch it. I'm just saying, hey, I can understand.
Yeah.
And to sit there and try to apply logic to it, like saying, how come you're not scared of driving?
Because I do drive. Because I drive all the time.
Not you. I'm talking about the people that are definitely afraid of this new thing.
All right.
But they're not scared of this other thing that causes way more damage.
Right.
And the thing that I read or something that I looked at basically said is because the other thing is you're used to it. You're more likely to be scared of new stuff than stuff that you're used to.
But also, these are all, like, a lot of them are older people. Like, much older. So, like, I'm like, well, if I was in their shoes, I might be exactly the same way.
Well, at the beginning, that's the people that usually had the most negative results.
Right. So, anyway, I don't know where I'm going, but it's just something that
But I don't think but in the macro, you got to be like, well, okay, so this new disease affects a very small number of people that negatively. So for the group, it's better to kind of soldier on.
So why do we all have to get fucking the shot? Because if somebody's gotten the shot, then they shouldn't be susceptible.
You're switching
Okay.
topics here.
All right.
That's another topic.
All right.
Slightly different, related, but slightly different. Because I'm saying, as an individual, I can understand the fear, but if I was the administrator of the group, I'd be like, you need to soldier on.
But the administrators are ramping up the fear.
Well, then there's got to be a reason. There's a reason for the ramping up of the fear that's to their benefit that we can only really assume because we don't know.
And they're coming up with stuff, and I'm like, why you got to have a lottery? Why you got to say, oh, well, you can win millions of dollars?
They might think that
I'm like,
that's
wow.
the reason. They might think that that's how to get people over the fear. or not. Like I said, these are all suppositions.
I mean, they're so desperate that they're having lotteries.
I don't know that it's desperation. Like I said, if you really want to be analytical about it, it's two different issues. Issue number one, for the group, the dangers seem not that great. They're worse than some things, but it's not like Ebola, as people are apt to say. But for the individual, it might not make any difference. I mean, there are people who will get Ebola and be able to come through it. Not many.
Very few.
Like 30%.
Wow, it's that high, huh?
Yeah, I think Ebola, there's some strains of Ebola that's like 90 something odd percent. And that happened in the 90s at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute. The acronym is USAMRID, but I forget what it meant. But it was a form of simian Ebola that didn't cross over to humans. Mm-hmm. But if you were a monkey and you got it, 90 some odd percent.
Good Lord.
And this was like in 95, 96. Or no, 94, 95. Well, actually, it was right around the same time as that movie Outbreak.
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? So let's say that going on all stuff, it's like a 0.01 or a 0.1 or a 1. It's a really low percentage of
Oh no, it's lower than that.
Really, really negative consequences, right? What if you're that one? What if you're in that cohort that's going to have a negative consequence and you just don't? And by looking at you, I mean, we really don't know. We kind of think it's if you're older, less healthy, fat, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm in a group that is really susceptible, I don't care that everybody else is going to be okay. I'm scared for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. There are a lot of people that are scared for themselves. Totally get it.
Yeah, but they make
totally get it.
Where I have difficulty is when people sit there and say, "Oh, I'm not scared for myself. This is about me caring for the group."
BS. I say that with complete confidence. That is a load of bovine stochopia about 200 stories high.
It really is. It really is. But that I mean, you say that to somebody and they're going to be indignant, man. They're going to be so indignant.
Let them.
How dare you say that?
Like this, I'll say it again. I dare. So what? Right? I mean, these same people would sit there if the tables were turned on something else. They would be all like, no, you can't think that. That's crazy. And, people are generally that way. All these people that talk about how, like, I just want to live or, and okay, you might want to throw me into that because I just said it. I just want to live, right? Mm-hmm. Think of all the occasions where people are like, dissent is great. We need dissent. We need honest discussion. Blah,
right.
blah, 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 blah. Tables are turned. It's something that they care about. All of a sudden, discussion is not okay. Dissent is not allowed. Mm-hmm. And it seems that that's just kind of like the baseline, the go-to for all people.
Yeah. Yeah, it is all. It's a lot of people.
No, it's pretty much all. When you're in the out group, you talk about how the in group needs to do all this stuff, be more considerate, blah blah blah, and you try to act like you're just this most reasonable person. All of a sudden, tables are turned. You're now in the in group, and that out group needs to be snuffed out. When you were in the out group, there needed to be more understanding, but now that you're in the in group, that understanding's bull. It's crap. You need to stop being stupid. Terrorist. Hater, Nazi, whatever.
That must be a frickin' group survival mechanism or something.
I think it's a survival mechanism, period. Whether or not you want to own up to it, to try and, evolve, change it, whatever, that's up to you. And even me saying that, I can almost guarantee you that given that choice, you're going to fail. Maybe 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 times out of 10. Life isn't about success. It's about dealing with your failures. And you will fail. Every day. Almost every time. You can talk big about how you're going to be brave and whatnot and junk like that. And then when things come a-knocking, all of a sudden all that junk is gone. And it could be a minor thing. And you might not want to be reminded of that failure, but it's there.
I like people pointing out my failures.
I didn't point out any failures.
No, but if you did, I was just thinking about that. I'm terrible at that.
I don't see anybody that's particularly good at it.
There's people who are terrible at it, though.
Sure, but it's like 50. It's like the old saying, 50 steps, 100 steps.
Yeah.
Think about, I try to stay even keel and not get angry and stuff, and yet I get angry all the time. To the point where I think a lot of the information coming out is really geared towards making you mind-numbingly angry.
I thought of by doing my little thing of just completely like disconnecting from media, that would make me less angry.
The only way,
but it's not really working.
The only way you're going to be able to disconnect and not be affected is to go somewhere where there's not another individual within 100 square miles of you.
That's a possibility.
No, that's the only way you're not going to be angry at people, angry at society, angry at stuff. That's built in. I'm wondering why it is so profitable to have everyone be angry and scared almost all the time.
I think we should talk about that.
We might not have an answer because whatever answer comes out, no matter how profound or truthful it may be,
nobody will hear it.
Well, no, it will sound glib. Think of, like I said, think of all the profound statements, thoughts that you have, and the second it comes tumbling out your mouth, you're like, that just sounds cliche and stupid.
Bro, I don't have that many profound thoughts.
But I will end with something about because I guess Mike Miley's been in the news a lot. There's a lot of right-leaning folks that are really, really hating on him, right?
This is the military guy, right? The general?
He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs currently. And this was on Tucker Carlson last week about all these regular corporate folks talking about how just singing his praises, same thing, right? Over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
And the reason why I thought that was funny was because if these people didn't agree with that, it'd be a totally different story.
No, it's black and white.
No, not even black and white. Just think about it, Think about when someone states an opinion or something that you agree with, that person's incredibly bright. That person's got it going on. That person knows what they're talking about. Now think about that person saying something you disagree with. Well, now that person's a dumbass. He's an idiot. He's a terrorist. He's a Klansman. He's a Nazi. Same person.
That's crazy.
And it's one of those things that I've run into in my life. When I was in school, I remember someone sitting there saying to me, oh, I love you because you just say it how it is, and you don't really seem to care about what other people are thinking. You tell the truth, you tell how it is, and that's it. And I remember thinking, well, that's just because you agreed with what I said. I mean, I think if...
You didn't say that?
I don't think that, unfortunately, I'm not that suave in the moment. Right? I mean, think of all the times or all those things that you thought you could have said when someone said something that made you mad, and at the time, all you could muster was,
or fuck you.
Yeah. And then later you're like, oh, I could have said this, I could have said that, and you're just
usually I end up saying fuck you.
And if you say that too many times, then it kind of loses its
or nothing.
effect.
Or something really stupid.
That's just life. That's just people. That's just the way we are.